Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're plunging into the story behind a piece of gear that it's kind of quietly shaped decades of music, everything from really raw punk to like polished alternative rock. But what is it about a simple stomp box? How does something like that become such a cornerstone? We were talking about the ProCo RAT distortion pedal. And when I first started digging into the sources, I mean, it really struck me just how iconic this thing became. It's revered for its versatility, yeah, but also that raw edge. And it has this unique way of straddling the lines between distortion, fuzz, and even overdrive. So our mission today, we're going to pull apart its, frankly, surprising history, dive into that one-of-a-kind circuit, track its evolution, the different models, highlight some of the famous musicians who made it legendary, and really try to understand its lasting cultural impact.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? How this little box, which, like you said, started from a company focused on cables, audio systems, that sort of thing, how it managed to carve out such a distinctive sound. It found its own voice and has stayed incredibly relevant for, what, decades now. It's on countless pedal boards, in so many iconic recordings. That, for me, that's the real aha moment of the RAT story.
Absolutely. Yeah, it makes you wonder how something seemingly pretty simple becomes so pivotal. So let's start right there at the beginning. The RAT's initial roar, its impact. Okay, so the ProCo RAT, it first came out back in 1978. ProCo Sound, they were based in Michigan, and like you mentioned, they were known for cables, audio systems. Pretty unexpected for them to then create, one of the most famous distortion pedals ever. But they did. And this pedal, it just exploded onto the scene, became an absolute cornerstone for rock, for alternative music. Pretty quickly, too, you could hear it and almost instantly know what it was. That distinctive filter knob, the gritty clipping, and its signature LM308 op amp. Those things made it a studio favorite, a stage favorite right from the 80s onward. And it's still widely used. People clone it, modify it all the time today.
Right. And what's really interesting about why it hit so hard so fast, it's how it stood out. Other pedals back then, they might give you a gentle overdrive or maybe like a full-on, sometimes really untamed fuzz. But the R8, it found the sweet spot. The sound was raw, yeah, aggressive even, but it was also surprisingly controlled, articulate. That kind of balance, that grit and clarity, that's what set it apart, made it adaptable to way more styles than maybe people first thought.
Okay, so that distinctive sound obviously made a huge impact straight away. But how did they build it? How did they get that sound?
Well, the answer is deep in the circuit design. Fundamentally, the RIot is a hard-clipping distortion pedal. Yeah, and a key insight here, maybe the genius part, is that filter control. It's not your typical tone out, not at all. It actually functions in reverse compared to what most guitarists expect. It's a low-pass filter. So turn it clockwise, you're actually cutting the treble. Makes it smoother, darker. Turn it counterclockwise, though, and you open up those highs. You get that raw, dark, edgy sound. But it's still really tweakable. This unique way of handling tone, it's absolutely fundamental to why the RAT sounds like a RAT. It almost like forced players to think about EQ differently.
That is such a quirky design choice, but obviously super effective. And it wasn't just the filter knob, right? When you dive into the actual circuit, the core features, you see that kind of intentionality. Like take the original op amp, the LM308N. Okay, for those of us not deep into electronics, an op amp, operational amplifier, it's like the little brain. Amplifies and shapes the signal before distortion. Now, the LM308N specifically had what's called a slow slew rate. What that translates to, for your ears, is that the circuit can't react instantly to super fast changes in the signal, kind of like it smooths out the really sharp edges. That led to that saggy, almost compressed distortion that people really loved. Though eventually the LM308 was discontinued, ProCo had to switch to other op amps like the OP07DP later on.
Exactly. And then you've got the silicon diodes. Think of them like little gates, chopping the top and bottom of the sound wave, clipping it. In the RAT, they give you symmetrical clipping right after that op-amp gain stage. Symmetrical just means they chop evenly from both sides. Gives the RAT that distinctive, smooth, yet aggressive distortion. People often say it sounds harmonically rich.
Right. And then, of course, the three knobs, each one pretty clear. Distortion for gain and clipping them out. Filter for that unique treble cut we just talked about, and volume for the output level. Simple enough. Early models, they used a buffered bypass, but later on, especially with boutique versions or mods, you started seeing true bypass more often.
Yeah, and if you connect those technical choices, those specific components back to the player's experience, what you get is something special. It wasn't just another distortion. It had a signature feel. That slow slew rate from the LM308 gave it this unique compression, sustain, almost felt like it was pulling the sound. Those silicon diodes gave a very specific, rich, full clipping sound. And that weird filter knob, well, that's what made it so incredibly versatile. You could dial in a smooth, dark lead or like a searing, trebly attack without losing that core RA character. It's those subtle details that really shaped its sound, made it instantly recognizable, but also super flexible.
It's amazing, isn't it, how a pedal with such a distinct voice could also be so adaptable. And given that versatility, it's probably no surprise the RT didn't just stay as one thing. It actually evolved quite a bit, adapted to what players needed. So first up, you had the super rare, super collectible Bud Box RT. This is like 78, 79. These were literally hand-built by ProCo folks, housed in these small, square Bud metal boxes. And, get this, no LED indicator, not even a battery door. Must have been fun on a dark stage. Then came the original large box RT from 79 to 83. It's the one people often picture. Had the LM308, that distinctive sloped enclosure, the RIT branding. Early ones still had some quirks, like reverse polarity power jack, still no LED, but it got known for being built like a tank. That rugged steel casing, that industrial look.
Right. And the big modernizations, the things that made it way more practical for working musicians, they really came with the R8 too. That launched in 1988, and believe it or not, it's still in production. This version finally added that LED, crucial, and a standard Boss-style 9V DC jack. Huge improvement for pedal boards. Now, some RETs kept the LM308 for a while, but others, yeah, due to supply, moved to the OP07DP. But it was a big step up in usability.
Okay, and then things started getting really interesting. The RAT family tree really branched out, showing just how versatile that core circuit was. You got the Turbo R, that came out in 91. This one had higher output, used LED clipping diodes instead of silicon. It gave it a much more aggressive, compressed, saturated tone, great for pushing an amp really hard. Then 2004, they brought out the U-Dirty RADs, it's fuzzier, used germanium and diodes, gave it a looser, more kind of vintage fuzz character, different flavor. And the Deuce Tone RAT, 2002 to 2015, that was a monster. 2 art circuits and 1 pedal, had different voicings, classic, turbo, dirty, even a clean art setting, designed for stereo rigs or, stacking art sounds. Big potential there. And more recently, 2016 onwards, the Fat RAT. This one's all about tweakability. Switchable clipping stock for the classic silicon sound, or MOSFET for something a bit different, maybe more tube-like breakup. Plus a bass boost switch and a socketed op-amp, usually LM308 compatible. Lets you swap it out easily. Made in the USA, people really praise its flexibility.
Yeah, and if you look at the big picture here, this whole diverse lineup, it just screams enduring appeal, doesn't it? It shows how adaptable that core RAT circuit really is. The fundamental design is so robust, so versatile. You can tweak it, revoice it for an incredibly wide range of sounds, from subtle boosts to like crazy fuzz, all while keeping that essential R-ness. It's really a testament to getting that initial design right.
So we've covered the history of the tech, but here's where it gets really fun. The legends, the guitarists, the producers who took this pedal and made it iconic. I mean, think about Kurt Cobain, Nirvana. He was known to use a Turbo RAT, especially around the In Utero sessions. That aggressive, almost chaotic, but still focused sound you hear on tracks like Heart-Shaped Box or Serve the Servants. Often that's the Turbo RAT driving things. Or how about Billy Corgan, Smashing Pumpkins, those massive layered guitar walls on Siamese Dream. Famously, he stacked RATs with big muffs, created this sound that was just huge but somehow still articulate. Then you've got Radiohead. Tom York, Johnny Greenwood especially, they use the RE2 all the time for those saturated, edgy textures, even for sonic glitches sometimes. Jeff Beck used early RTs back in the 80s for his fusion stuff, showing its range. And Sonic Youth, Thurston Moore, Lee Ranaldo. They used original R8s, modified R8s, extensively, really sculpted their unique, often abrasive, but always interesting sounds with it.
And what's truly striking is why. Why did players across such different genres gravitate towards it?
I think it comes down to that wide dynamic range and, again, that unique filter control. It wasn't just for alternative and grunge, though it defined a lot of that sound. It found a home in metal, punk, blues. I've even heard of jazz players using it. Its ability to go from just a little grit to this full-on singing sustain, and then letting you fine-tune that aggression with the filter. That allowed all these different players to find their specific voice within the RET sound. Really highlights its surprising reach, its flexibility. That is a surprisingly wide range.
Yeah.
It really is. Were there any genres historically where the RET just didn't quite land, or where players found it harder to fit in?
That's a good question. I mean, while it is incredibly versatile, its fundamental character is pretty aggressive, right? So in genres needing absolutely pristine, clean tones, or maybe very transparent, subtle overdrive, think certain types of country, maybe traditional jazz, it might not be the first pedal you'd grab. But even then, you find creative players using it subtly, maybe just for a touch of grit or a very focused lead tone. Its strength is definitely its distinct coloration, its character. It's not trying to be invisible.
Incredible how it crosses those lines, though. And that versatility, it goes right into the DIY world, too. The RAT circuit is huge among DIY builders. It's right up there with maybe the Tube Screamer, the Fuzz Face,
Yeah.
one of the most cloned, modded, analyzed circuits ever.
Yeah, and this brings up an important point. Why? Why is this circuit so popular for modding and tinkering? Well, its design is robust, but also relatively simple. That makes it a perfect canvas for experimentation. Because the core parts are so fundamental, even small changes can lead to pretty dramatic sonic differences. Common mods. People swap op amps all the time. LM308 to maybe a TL071 or OP07 changes the feel. Or changing the clipping diodes using LEDs, MOSFETs, germanium diodes, or even mixing them up for asymmetrical clipping alters the distortion character significantly. People tweak the filter too, changing capacitor values for a different sweep, add true bypass, or even build dual RATs inspired by the deuce tone. It really shows how empowering a well-designed circuit can be for hobbyists and experimenters.
And it's not just the DIY folks, right? Loads of well-known boutique builders have pedals directly inspired by the RAT. You've got the Walrus Audio Iron Horse, the JHS Pack Rat, which actually packs multiple RAT modes into one pedal. The Mojohan Rook, Earthquaker Devices, Acapulco Gold has a very RAT-inspired voice, even if it's simpler. Schematic mods ratified, the list goes on. This circuit just seems to keep inspiring new generations of pedal makers.
Exactly. And that widespread adoption by boutique builders, it just reinforces the idea that the core design has this kind of fundamental sonic magic. It can be adapted, refined, pushed in different directions to suit countless tastes. Makes it a perennial favorite for commercial builders and home tinkerers alike. Shows how one brilliant idea can really ripple outwards through the whole industry.
That cross-generational appeal, I mean, few other pedals really have that, do they? It's raw, unapologetic distortion sound. It really was a defining voice for 80s hard rock and then 90s alternative and grunge.
It really is a tonal chameleon because that interface is simple but powerful, and that unique filter circuit, that combination just gives you such a wide spectrum from barely there dirt to just full-on compressed saturation. It covers a lot of ground.
And it's amazing to think its production just keeps going. Still available today, various versions for different needs. That proves its timelessness, I think. What a legacy.
Oh, absolutely. And that legacy is also cemented by how collectible the vintage ones are.
Yeah.
Those early Budbox RATs, or the LM308 equipped large boxes, they command serious money on the used market now. That signifies their historical importance, their sonic value. They're more than just effects pedals at this point. They're genuine pieces of music history, and they keep appreciating.
So wrapping this up,
Correct.
What does it all mean? I think the ProCo RT, it's clearly not just another distortion pedal. It's a cultural landmark in guitar history. A prime example of how, unexpected innovation can pop up from humble beginnings and just define an era.
Yeah, it really carved out its own unique sonic space. It came along when overdrives and fuzz boxes were already established, but the RAT stood out. That raw aggression, the smooth sustain, that incredibly flexible filter, it found a unique niche different from anything else that allowed it to become this incredibly versatile workhorse for so many players.
Truly amazing. Loved by grunge icons, jazz players, metalheads, pedal geeks.
Yeah.
It just keeps inspiring people, players, and builders over 4 decades later.
And that remarkable versatility, that's its superpower, right? Whether you want filthy fuzz or tight distortion or just a cutting overdrive boost, the RT delivers. And with a few tweaks, maybe some mods, it can be almost anything you want it to be. Its enduring appeal, I think, lies right there. It can be both a blunt instrument and a fine-tuning tool, all in one little, unassuming black box.
Absolutely. So we definitely encourage you, listen closely for that distinctive RAT sound in some of your favorite tracks. Or even better, if you're a player, maybe explore its sounds for yourself. You might just find your next favorite tone. And maybe gain a deeper appreciation for how such a simple box made such a huge, huge impact on music.